Hello and welcome. You know what it is. Welcome to Almost 30 Podcast.
You know what it is. You know who we are. Lindsey and Krista, we are here just for a good time. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for supporting the show throughout the years, sending to your friends, DMing us. It's meant the world. And we're so excited to be here. Episode 715.
Dude, we missed our opportunity to celebrate 700.
We usually do that where we're like, oh God.
I know. We're like, what? I remember 600. 600 felt like yesterday. 700. It's like, man, if I wanted to wipe my identity from the internet or the world, good luck.
People be scrubbing for years.
It's so crazy. I was at Podcast Movement recently and saw a bunch of people that we knew from the beginning. And it was just crazy to be like recognizing, first of all, our podcast in the journey, and then also how podcasting has changed. You know, it's just now so different than when we started. The environment, the landscape, so many things. And it was so interesting to talk to so many podcasters because I'm reminded that podcasting is such an industry of people that love what they do, really are passionate about the medium, and also hide. It's a medium where you can really hide, you know, because you're behind a microphone and because you're, you know, not always seen. It's like people have this like desire and passion to grow or monetize or all these things. And it's like, you got to get that mindset first, right? You have to like really commit or believe that you can be seen or feel safe being seen. So I don't know why I said that, but I was just reminded of that when I was in the process. I'm like, dang, so many people want to do the thing, but if they don't have the mindset right to like believe in themselves or like actually put themselves out there, it's just never going to work.
Yeah, that it really carries you through, you know, because it's not easy. You know, it's not an easy medium to keep up with, to be consistent with. And so I think that's the secret sauce. I was talking to someone the other day and they weren't familiar with our pod. How dare her?
What?
But I said, oh yeah, we've been doing it for like 8 years. And she's like, oh, so you were one of the pods that actually started with like a really like pure intention and like,
Amen.
and like who actually wanted to like start a podcast for the right reasons is what she said. And I was like, damn, you said it. I didn't.
Was like, hey man, can I record that for you, please? Honestly.
Because I think, you know, what we see now, and like no shade, but I think it's creating a little bit of a problem, which is people are creating podcasts who maybe shouldn't. People are creating podcasts because they feel like they have to or need to in order to be relevant, in order to reach their people. And that's not necessarily wrong, but, you know, like my butcher doesn't need to start a podcast. You know what I'm talking about?
If I had $1, like, anyone who asks me what I do, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you everything that I do. So I'm just like, I have a podcast. And they're like, literally not a question about me. They're like, I've always wanted to start a podcast.
Yeah.
At my flight.
Oh, you've always wanted to?
Oh, always? Yeah, literally. Or they'll always say, because even on my flight, I was working on my flight and someone sitting next to me looked over and was kind of looking at my stuff. And they're like, oh, are you doing a podcast or whatever? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you know, my friends have always told me I should start a podcast. I'm like, totally.
I know.
Follow
and
your
I think the problem that it's creating is the oversaturation. Like there's so many options. There's so many shows. It's kind of like, let me complain for a second and kind of say what's wrong. And then I'll say what's amazing and right. But it's actually hard to find podcasts these days categorically. So you're like searching on Apple Podcasts and they're kind of like promoting shows that have connections to Apple Podcasts and pay for it and whatever. And you're not really able to find the shows that you really should and desire to be listening to because of the oversaturation, because of, you know, the powers that be. So it's just an interesting changed landscape. But I think what's amazing is that it does give a platform to so many people that do deserve to, I mean, everyone deserves to be heard, but in this type of medium. And I think that's been really incredible. It allows people to share information that I think would otherwise on like national broadcasts or national whatever be censored. So I think that's really cool. So
Yeah, I
there's
was
a lot
thinking
of
about that
positives.
recently when I saw Theo Vaughn interview Donald Trump. I was like, dang, like that's crazy. That's like what
It's crazy.
podcasting can do. Like,
It's
you know what I
amazing.
mean? It's like gives people that platform, like for better, for worse, whatever you guys think about that. But it's like
Yeah.
insane that podcasting is that powerful now where it's like impacting the masses in that way. And yeah, I think when I was at Podcast Movement, there was big podcasters talking about, they're like, it's not a podcast, it's a show. So they kind of see it as like a show where it's almost like taking over like what we see in TV, like late night or any
Yes.
of these things. And now they have podcasts on, planes and kind of like as this regular medium. But it's interesting too, what's happening in the world where it's like people can have a TikTok following from that, create a small business with merch or products or whatever the things are, then create kind of the arms around it, which is like the podcast, the YouTube, the TV show. And it's like so many people are doing that. I'm wondering what's going to happen in the future because there's just going to be so many of that, but that's changing like our
Yeah.
economy incredibly. But it's nice because it's actually supporting and helping create and sustain small businesses in a way that I think we were losing in a lot of different areas. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
were kind of losing the small business, and it actually is sort of supporting the small businesses. And it's nice too, like women just crush in social. Like women crush on social media, women crush in this space. Most of the women that I know are the most successful, that make the most amount of money are women. Their men support them or their men work for them. And it's such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing to see that we've really just like owned kind of this medium, like this
Mm-hmm.
space, like whether it's podcasting or whether it's, um, Instagram or TikTok or whatever, women just like crush.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Um, you saw our old friends at
Par.
an ad agency that we adore, and I was
Love
just
them.
laughing. Yeah, I was laughing when you said that because I was like, dang, they're just a super cool, funny motley crew
Motley
that
Crue.
like I adore catching up with. Anyway, that's very vague, but we work with um, an agency that helps to connect us with brands, and they've been with us since the beginning.
Hmm.
So to see our evolution and their evolution has been really fun.
Yeah, it was good. It was like seeing so many old people that we've known, just like, yeah, it was just such a blast. I was there with Kajabi, which is an incredible company. It's really great for creators to do courses and programs on. We've done it before with memberships and stuff like that. And I just love them. I adore them. And I love, like talking about diversification of monetization, because I think so often people think about monetizing in one way, especially if you want to be on social media, if you want to be on YouTube. They're like brand deals, brand deals, brand deals. And yeah, brand deals are amazing, but there's so many other ways to monetize and think about
Mhm.
how you want to diversify your income. And they say that millionaires have an average of 7 income streams. So how can you think
Mhm.
creatively about your income streams? How can you think creatively about all the ways that you can get paid and make money? I think for me, I almost feel embarrassed about all those things that I do. I don't know why, because it's like there's no word for it. So whenever I talk to people, I'm like, I don't know what I do.
Well, I think it's just we're kind of in this like in between time where I think to a lot of people that is like you can't choose like
For sure.
uh, oh, you can't choose one thing, like you need to be doing all those things. And I'm sure, it's a weird deprogramming that I
Yeah.
think we're kind of moving through right now because I mean, to anyone that is in this space and or knows what that actually means and how like incredibly lucrative and also smart it is, you wouldn't blink. But I totally get what you mean. It's more so to the like older
Oh
generation
yeah.
kind of, or those that are on a more linear path. It's like, huh, that does not compute.
I
That's
was
weird.
like called my mom, and she was in the car on the way somewhere with her friends, and she's like, "Hey, I've got my friends in the car." She's like, "You're on speaker. So tell me about what's all this tell me about all the ways, I don't know what you do. So tell us what you do." And I had to
How do
like
you make money?
no, I had to like literally I had to like tell them how I make money. I had to like pitch myself. It was like goodness Lord. Goodness Lord.
I love a speaker moment with a parent.
Oh, I love it. And it's so funny because it's so performative. It's like, it's
Yes, of
just, this is
course.
all for you, my darling. But yeah, we're
I-
working right now on a brand rebrand, which is going to be really exciting. We've had our brand, which I love, our website, which is so beautiful. We've had it for, I think, since 2019. and just want to do a judge, want to do an update, want to kind of bring us into 2025 to the launch of the book next year, which is going to be so exciting, and just bring us to a space that feels more like where we're at and feels more like us, feels more not even like mature, because it's not like we're going more mature, but just feels more up to date and current and like sexy and cool. So we're really excited about that. But the brand has really evolved. Like I think this brand iteration is like the most like us, but I think the next one's going to be super sick.
Yeah, and that's the thing, anyone who has their own brand or, works on branding in any capacity, it's like it's going to evolve with you. Like it's impossible. I would think it's pretty impossible to have like the same branding for the entirety of one's career life or brand life. So I'm excited. It always like just injects a little bit of energy and inspiration into almost 30 when we do these, and it always like retains the energy and feel, the intention that we have. But I'm really excited to see that, and just to have it like coupled with the launch of the book. I think will be really, really fun. The book is coming out in June 2025. Stay tuned.
Working on covers now. We're in the cover process, which is so hard because you're like,
I know.
I want it to be classic and stunning, but you also want it to like pop and all these things. There's just a lot to think about with books. So excited to tell you guys more about it. We'll talk to you more about the process. If you guys are interested, just let us know later in the year. But I'm excited about this interview. I know you did this one with Yasmin in New York, and you were just like raving about it after. I love her work, and I feel like her book is just incredible. So I'm like pumped to hear this one.
Yeah, her new book, Wisdom of the Path. It's the beautiful and bumpy ride to healing and trusting our inner guide. And I've just always really loved her writing and just how she shows up online as well. Give her a follow. She's really incredible, Yasmine Cheyenne on Instagram. But we had a cool conversation. I feel like it felt more dynamic than most, but really in this book, she's so candid about her journey with divorce, career changes, grief, major life transitions, feeling super lost, like at her very, very lowest bottom, and just how she's kind of overcome that overwhelm and stepped into the life that she is living now. And yeah, I really love her. I think you guys are going to love the book, Wisdom of the Path. But we talk about so many things. The need for elders, which I thought was a really interesting conversation. I think I shared with her, I was like, I'm just kind of sick of like 19-year-old life coaches, you know what I mean? Like where when I see quote unquote elder on Instagram, which is like very rare, I get really excited because one, like, yeah, you just don't see that on Instagram, but I can feel the resonance of like their wisdom and what they're sharing. And yeah, I didn't grow up in a home or a culture where I think that was respected. And so I'm thinking a lot about that. Like, what does that look like? And how can I kind of cultivate that for my children? And how can I kind of call that in now,
Yeah, since my dad's in a home, my dad has Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and he's pretty sick. And so he's been in a home for a while, and it's like being there with elders, like we just put them away, put them aside, kind of patronize them. We like avoid them. Like it's so crazy being there, because I'll go there like once a month in Florida, and like so many people never go see their parents. So many people never like make time. And I no judgment, I'm not perfect, but it's like very sad because they don't have a lot of visitors. And like, it's been a really interesting experience to see how poorly we treat elder people, and how much in our Western culture, we just disregard any people that are aging or even in the dying process, like our avoidance of death. It's all kind of like around the death thing too. So yeah, it's really bad. It's heartbreaking. I was even having a conversation with Christine, who's one of our friends who's been staying with me. And I was talking about this garden in my neighborhood, and there's this really beautiful flower garden, and part of the garden is just flourishing like crazy. It's just so beautiful. And the man that runs the garden, he put this garden out on behalf of his wife who passed. But he told me that the part of the garden that was really flourishing, where the flowers, the dahlias were growing so tall, is flourishing because there was a woman that actually was buried and composted. So her body was composted when she passed. And then they put her, the dirt from her in that part of the garden. And that was the part of the garden that was flourishing. And so there's parts of the world now, and there's like one in Nashville where you can actually be buried in the ground and like given back to the earth. So the natural cycle of death, life, and birth is actually like completed, where you're actually taken into the earth. Because it's actually really interesting if you think about us being buried in coffins and kind of that avoidance of true integration with the earth, like how we always want to keep ourselves separate from the earth. We want to be different than the earth. We want to be protected from the earth. We want to be protected from our bodies decaying and dying. And this is all just like that fear of death, that fear of aging. So yeah, the elder thing is really powerful. And it would be really interesting to think about how you could facilitate that, because there is a voice in my head that thinks that elders are judgmental or mean. I don't know if it was just my grandparents, but I'm like, where do I get like a good elder?
Yeah.
I'm like, where do I get the good ones?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of start that conversation here. I'm curious what you all think listening. But we also talk about just holding both grief and joy. And I know you've talked about this too, just what you've been moving through, Krista, but how we can do that as adults. She experienced loss of someone very close to her grandmother, and just how she's been able to hold both in her life. We talk about this concept of joy as a constant. We talk about just this kind of need for control that I feel like we all really have at different times, and how she really learned this behavior out of like the need for safety and love. And we kind of openly share both about our experiences with that. And we talk a lot about just like love and self-love and acceptance on this path. Cause I think, even though we say like, I love myself, it's like when like shit really gets real, like, are we actually loving ourselves in practice, not just saying it out loud?
Yes.
So anyway, this was like a really full, beautiful conversation. I was so happy we got to do it in person. The book is Wisdom of the Path. Get it anywhere books are sold. And she is Yasmine Cheyenne on Instagram. Give her a follow.
Yay. I love that. I cannot wait. Thank you so much, Yasmin, for joining Almost 30. Thank you guys for being a part of our lives, our community. Morning microdose is the daily dose. It's like your daily dose of inspiration. I had a man approach me on the street and he was like, I love morning microdose. It's the best. So it's for the men too, for all the ladies. If you want to get your partner listening to pods or listening to the wisdom of Almost 30, it's a good place to start. It's ad-free as well. And then TikTok and Instagram, we have our reels. We have so many funny memes. It's just the place to be. And then almost30.com for all of our partner information. We have amazing discount codes with our partners. And then we have more information on us. Really appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing. It means a lot to us. It's just super kind. Just gives us a little dopamine hit that we all need. And we have a YouTube. So we'll be on video on YouTube anytime you see a new episode.
All right, y'all. Enjoy this one, and we'll see you on the other side. I've been working really hard on improving my health, always. I just feel like there are seasons of my life that really require that. And part of that is drinking my AG1 every single morning before working out, before making my coffee. It's really like the start to my day, and it makes me feel so good, so energized. It helps me to be regular. I love it so much. It tastes amazing, and I've been taking it for years now, and I will continue to take it. I love this brand. They're always putting the formula to the test. It's trusted by experts and professionals. I have a lot of like professionals in the space that are friends of ours that always talk about AG1, who have it in their homes. Their families are taking it. This brand is obsessed with research and is obsessed with just having the highest quality formula. They've done a ton of studies recently, and what they found, so interesting, 97% of people in a research study felt more energy after 30 days of drinking AG1. Incredible. 91% of participants notice that they need less coffee after 60 days of drinking AG1. I've noticed that too. I drink way less coffee. Some days I don't even like want it or crave it. It's awesome. AG1 contains ingredients that support sustained energy so you can be the very best version of yourself each and every day. I need that as a new mom. How about you? I'm sure you need energy for all of the things you're doing. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why we've partnered with them for so long. We love them. Starting your journey with AG1 is a win. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/almost30. That's drinkag1.com/almost30. Check it out. One of my favorite supplements I'm taking right now is the magnesium, the Advanced Magnesium Plus from JS Health Vitamins. It's the best magnesium I've ever taken. It contains 3 forms of bioavailable magnesium, and it's carefully designed to support muscle relaxation, recovery, energy production, and nervous system function. Um, I will take this at night before I go to bed, and y'all, my skin and digestion has never been better. I get up, I am regular, have like a nice healthy, you know what? And I've just noticed like my skin, I don't have those like pesky breakouts around my jawline or my mouth anymore. And honestly, I think it's because of the magnesium. It's so good. It's so, so good. If you're unfamiliar with JS Health, Jess Eppel has been on the podcast before. She's the founder. This brand is a science-focused vitamin and wellness brand that provides targeted formulas to help you meet your personal health goals. They have the highest quality ingredients and it's backed by research. It's made in Australia and it's formulated by expert nutritionist Jess Eppel. We love her. Her heart is just so good and her mission we stand by. So try these supplements out. Again, the magnesium is one of my faves. You can use the code almost30 for 20% off a one-time or first subscription order. Go to jshealthvitamins.com/A30 and use the code almost30 at checkout for 20% off your purchase. That's jshealthvitamins.com/A30 and then use the code almost30 at checkout for 20% off. Okay, amazing. I'm so freaking thrilled you're here in person. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your book, I'm so thrilled for the world to read this book. I was just saying that your ability to create poetry within this work for me was just such a new way of like metabolizing some of the concepts that some of which I've heard in different forms, but a lot of which I haven't. And it just like landed with me differently through your words. So that's why I'm like, anyone who has a book in their heart needs to write the book because it's just meant to come through them. And it's just so obvious through Wisdom on the Path. Your second book that's coming out. Actually, it's out now when this episode comes out. And we were just kikiing on motherhood and all the things, what it takes to get to an interview like this, what you have to set up, who you have to call on, all of the things. You were talking about your recovery, just in terms of having a baby and feeling like yourself again. I'd actually love to just kind of start there because, feeling like yourself again. Can you talk more about that in terms of what it took to get there? But also, I feel so different. And it's like meeting your new self and what that's been like.
Yeah, I think the first thing was that I was wholeheartedly comparing myself to what I thought myself should feel like. So when I had my first daughter, who is 13, there was not social media the way we know it today. So I didn't really have anything to compare myself to. The second time around, I was seeing the snapback pictures. I was seeing, moms on vacation with their kids, which I was just like, how are you doing that? And I think it started like a spiral of, I'm not healing properly. I'm not doing this properly. And then I started having hormonal issues. I started breaking out. I'd never broken out. I had severe acne. I noticed I was inflamed, like, swelling in my body. I wasn't able to lose some of the baby weight, even though I was working out and I was active. And I, through functional medicine, found that I had PCOS, I had hormonal issues, I had gut issues. And what's so interesting about this is that it was clear that it was going to be a long-term process. Nobody wants to hear that. I was like, okay, I'll take a pill, it'll be fine. No, she was like, this is going to take a few years. And it almost forced me to be patient and slow down and care for myself rather than like the first time around, start running in 8 weeks. And it's fine if you can do that. And I was on active duty in the military, so there was a reason behind that, but caring for myself was not a priority. It was just push through, perform, show up. And although I wouldn't want to go through the fire of PCOS to have to learn to care for yourself, I think my guardian angels know me well enough that I won't listen unless it's like
totally
in
send
my
her the
face.
fire. And you're like, okay, got it. Completely. The patience thing is really interesting, something I've been thinking about a lot, because I do think in a world where, it's the smartphone world, it's social media, where everything is very immediate or seemingly. Like we don't really see people's process. They might show it in a 20-second reel after the fact, but it's distorting the reality of some of these seasons of our life. And it's causing so much frustration and pain and comparison tendencies. I have that severely in some seasons. And so I guess what would you say to people who are feeling like what they want should happen now and why they're feeling so frustrated and I think ungrounded in the intention of it all?
Yeah, I think whether it's having a baby, starting a new career, divorce, we are kind of programmed today to think that things are going to happen overnight just by the way that we can make things look like they happened overnight. But social media is just like our new teen magazine. Like when you and I were growing up, the magazines would say like go from day to night, blah, 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 blah. And we just thought, oh, everything happens in 5 minutes. I just bring a lipstick and I changed my life. And so I think that it's important that when we think about sharing our stories, that we know that not everyone has earned the right to share them. We don't have to share our process online so that people feel seen. We share it when we feel comfortable, and we share it with people who we know are going to show up for us and support us and love us, and when we feel strong enough and safe enough to do that. And also reminding ourselves that what we see online is probably not an honest reflection is, I think, the key thing that's going to help us be able to remove ourselves. Like, I'm not sharing every single thing that happens in my life, which most likely means this person that I'm watching is not sharing everything. And it takes, I don't know about you, but for me, it's a it's a reminder that I have to repeat
Constant.
to myself. Yes.
Yes, completely. Well, because I think we're looking online for the answers. We're looking for validation. We're looking for the right way or the wrong way to do we're kind of seeking rather than creating a healthy distance between what someone's life is and what our life is, and how different the nuance of the circumstances are. So yeah, I completely relate. And I'm just curious how you've gotten to that place with social media, because I feel like people want that. They want to have that type of relationship. But I don't want to say it's hard. I just want to say it's challenging in this day and age where it's literally in our pockets. We're kind of addicted to it.
Yeah.
Most of us.
Sure.
And how you've gotten to a healthier place with that.
I definitely had to take a break for a second for me. I just needed to renew my relationship to myself before I came back online. Because I think the picking your phone up the first thing you wake up, which I think we all do. I still do it sometimes. It's part of my job. So I'm always like making sure I'm a part. So, and I had to, and if social media is not your job, I'll touch on that in a second. But for those of us that it's our job, I think I had to create a separation. When I come online, I'm here to perform this task like a job.
Yes.
And I am excited to see the people I love and I connect with and I support. And also this is work. This is not a part of who I am. This does not validate my personal life. This is not anything other than a tool that I get to use to share really important information with my community and to receive the things that I care about. And so I had to start to really organize social media in a way that it wasn't. When we first started social media, it wasn't necessarily to get information. It was like to share pictures and hang out with your friends. That was it.
My first picture was like of juices in my
Right.
fridge. I kind of want to go back to that.
Yes. It was like nothing mattered.
Nothing mattered.
Nothing. And so I think for us millennial folk, we've had to like reorganize it. If social media is not a part of your job and you just are a consumer and you get to enjoy it and get to use it, I really think it's important to follow people that help you feel good when you see their posts. So many of us are hate following.
Say more about that. What does that mean?
We're following people that we hate just so we can talk-ish about them, gossip about them. Oh my God, did you see what she posted? I can't stand her. It's like, unfollow.
Unfollow. Wow.
And we do that in our personal lives too. We are friends with people we don't really like. We're in relationships with people we don't really like. I think that is part of the process when it comes to social media, relationships, even work. Really asking yourself, what does this thing serve in my life? How can I relate to it in a way that is filling me rather than draining me? And if it is draining me, what needs to go? This took years. I've been online professionally for this will be my 8th year. So it's taken a lot of time, I would say. The bigger that I've gotten, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, but the bigger that I've gotten, the harder it is. You have so much noise coming in. And I had to just really be really cognizant. If I wouldn't let a person that I know talk to me this way, then block.
Yes.
If I wouldn't let a person that I know talk to me this way, then unfollow. And just treating it as the relationship that it is.
Completely. And it's so important to remember, it's like, this is my house in terms of like my space on social media, and like you choose to be here. And so if you're going to, make my house look or feel like, or disrespect it, then like you're disinvited and it's all good. But I think people get first of all, I think people are behind screens. They would never say what they say online in person. Like, imagine them sitting on this couch and saying the same thing they would to you.
Never.
They would never. So I just have to remind myself of that. But I feel like I've grown a bit more distant, even though I'm still sharing. I've just grown more distant from social media, whether it's like I'm not sharing as much about my personal life, or I'm not sharing consistently. And by the way, this does not help you grow. This does not help my like professional life online necessarily. But I've had to make that choice because it was better for my mental health. It was better for my personal relationships. I don't do a good job of what it sounds like you're able to do, which is like show up, do my thing, leave, but do it consistently. I still have that relationship where I'm like, am I fully expressed through social media? It's like this weird, like existential crisis every time I'm like there where I'm like, does this feel aligned? Am I doing,
Yeah.
So I just had to distance and be like, wait, this isn't that serious. It really, and to your point, it doesn't define who I am, and it is not who I am fully. So yeah, I just wanted to track that about your
I think
journey.
that's knowing yourself though, which is like the same thing that I did essentially, but just a different outcome. Like you knew what was going to be good for you, and you acted accordingly. And I think that's what everyone needs to do with social media and relationships in general.
And I love your point in Wisdom on the Path about just being so being honest with yourself about yourself and where you've been and where you are before you can move forward and make a decision like that, or, kind of create boundaries in your life. Can you talk about that? Because it sounds really like baller to be like, I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm going to get real. And then when it comes down to actually doing it, I know I've had moments where I'm like, this is too much. It's too much. I feel like a piece of shit, and how to do that with love and compassion.
I think that most of us are in a relationship with ourselves where we aren't honest. I don't think that since you're like 5 years old, you've been told like, be a good girl, do this, be nice. And it's like, what if I don't want to be nice? Like that's never considered. It's just, this is what you do. So we're programmed to kind of lie to ourselves for the comfort of others from pretty early on. So it's no mistake that we aren't being honest with ourselves too. But what happens when you say to yourself, actually, this marriage isn't working because I never actually wanted to be here. I was just afraid that if I didn't say yes, that I would never get married, or, I don't want to have kids, or this career isn't fulfilling, or, whatever it is that you need to be honest with yourself about, you finally have the power of choice. And I think so many of us think I should just go with the flow and then choices will arrive, which sometimes they do. But wouldn't it be wonderful to be in the power position of your life and actually be able to say yes or no to whatever it is you want? You really can't do that without being honest. Otherwise, you're just kind of following the plan that others may have for your life, or following what you think you should be doing. And so I think what Wisdom of the Path invites us to do is to look at our past selves with compassion. We made the choices that we thought were best. We did what we thought was best. In fact, that person got us to where we are here today, because so many of us look at our past selves with shame or disgust or guilt. Can you believe I dated that guy? Or can you believe I did this? And what I want us to do is to gain the lessons that we need and use it as an opportunity to be honest with ourselves today, so that as we move forward, we really hold our honesty with truth and trust and compassion. And we are willing to listen instead of stuffing down the voice that's like, hey, this is not it for you.
Yes. Why do you think we stuff down that voice and like that truth that tries to speak to us? Because it sounds like, I think for me, if I think about moments in my life where I haven't listened to that voice, it's because there's too much going on and I don't create the space for it to actually be heard. And I'm also distracted by the other voices, whether it's like my parents, society, my friends, social media, whatever it is. And I'm unable to like isolate my inner voice and be like, okay, let me tune into you. What do you think? What has been, I guess, your experience with that?
I think for many of us, we aren't being honest about our voice or listening to that voice because of the potential disappointment that listening to that voice will bring. If I'm honest with myself, then I have to call off the wedding. If I'm honest with myself, then I have to leave the job. If I'm honest with myself, then she's never really been my friend. That is the reckoning that so many of us don't want to have, because then once we have the truth, then what do we do?
Yes.
I can't keep pretending. Can I? I can't keep pushing forward like everything's fine. I'm going to have to talk about it. I'm going to have to make a decision. And so many of us choose Disneyland, the fairy tale of whatever we think we have versus the reality of what we have, because it may not look as grand in the moment. But I think the reality is beautiful, because when we look at the truth of what is, that is how we can actually shift to what we want. And you might look at your reality and say, this is exactly what I want. Actually, what I've been working toward is not what I want. I need to just be happy with what I have now. It's not always that you need to shift. Sometimes it's, I need to just ground in and be present and be thankful for what I have, because this is what it is. This is what I want. But I think most of us are afraid that honesty is going to pop the bubble, which a lot of times it does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that keeps us really stuck and paralyzed and unable to actually take the steps necessary. But I actually want to touch on what you just said about being satisfied with where we are and realizing that what we think we desire is actually not the thing, whether it's expired or maybe it was someone else's vision. Because I think that's something I've experienced in my life. And it's also been because what I have feels like it's enough here, but my mind says it's not enough. And motherhood is the main example I'm thinking of, where it's to me, it's almost everything. It's like part of my purpose. And there's also this like mind chatter of like, yeah, but what's next? And like, what else? And what if it doesn't validate you like the other things do? Or, just all of these questions and doubts, but in my heart, I know. So it's like a constant battle.
Or conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
The reframe.
I think for a lot of us, the desire to be good feels like a cop-out. I think it's a part of the capitalistic programming a bit, but it's like,
yes,
be good with where you are. Like, and I always like when I go to Europe or I go travel to, South America or the Caribbean or anywhere, I always find the vast contrast between us here in America
yes,
and people in other places and their contentment
yes,
versus our striving.
Totally agree.
And so I think, again, it's one of those things that's ingrained in us to constantly be striving, even when we're happy where we are. And so I just feel like there's a part of the book that's called Where You Are. There's a part about the past. It's a part about the future. But the where you are, I think, is so important because we are working every day to get to the future, whether we want to or not. Like time is passing. If we start to think about the future from that perspective, then it's not always such an uphill battle. It's like, I'm going to wake up, God willing, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So my only goal is to do the best that I can every day, regardless, because every day is what I'm going to get as long as I'm alive.
Yes.
Versus next year, I need to have achieved X amount of things, or all of the days of that year don't matter. And that's like a very vast contrast. But I think some of us, like myself, are recovering perfectionists. If you're a recovering overachiever, if you are a recovering overworker, or maybe you're not in recovery and you're still in that space full on people pleasers, we're always looking for the next way that we can give, that we can feel validated in what we're doing and the validation of others around us, celebrating whatever we've achieved. And it's like, what if right now motherhood is enough?
Yeah.
I'm, talking about you. Or what if right now, I was just talking to one of my sisters who's 10 years younger than me, and she's living at home and she is out of college and she's about to finish her master's and she's saving to buy her first house. And I was just thinking, like, that is not something that I was thinking about, at that age. I was more so thinking, like, who am I going to date? I don't know. It was just very
so different. Yeah.
partnership driven.
Yes.
And I think and I'm seeing it in younger generation coming up, that has been removed. And so I think we're still living in part of that matrix. But have you seen the Barbie movie?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I just recently saw it this weekend.
Tell me.
But it's like they were in this matrix. Where they thought that essentially Barbie had made everything better, and that the real world would be fantastic. And when she went, she was like, why is there a patriarchy? Why are there all these things? And we live in whatever matrix we want to live in, where we believe whatever we think will help us feel satisfied.
Right.
But what if we just actually lived in the truth, the reality, the honesty of what is now? And I think getting us out of whatever story, whatever matrix, whatever word you want to use for it, of what we think it should be, and looking at what it is, that's the work. And I don't want anyone to think like, oh my God, am I going to be healing for the rest of my life? Like, that's not my intention. I hope that you're living and loving and enjoying your life. But I'm sharing this more so that we know that I think it's an everyday choice. It's an everyday thing that we are deciding. And sometimes I have days where I'm like, oh, here I am again, reminding myself that it's okay that my kitchen isn't remodeled. It's fine. Whatever it is that I'm complaining about, and then sometimes I'm like, actually, your complaining is valid and this is BS. It's that conversation with ourselves that we're having.
Compassionate approach. Yeah, I think it's so, sometimes I'll like pull up and out of my like loop and be like, damn, you're just being so judgmental, critical of yourself, and just not giving myself the the credit for whether it's like all that I've accomplished. And now I'm in a season where I can really be soft and like present to my life. And also realizing this is what I prayed for. Like, this is truly what we hear that on social media, right? Like, you are like, you have what you prayed for, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh no, like, what does it mean to truly feel that I am living a life that I once prayed for when I was single for 7 years? Like, it's just, yeah, it's profound when I kind of roll up the narratives around me that I'm just letting kind of overwhelm me and be like, wait a second, let me find a little silence and realize and like take in the view of what's around me. And I also think, and you do such a good job in this book of reminding us that like in that present, being where you are, there is so much wisdom. We think of wisdom as like past experience. Yes, that's true. But there's also like so much in the present moment, whether it's our body is giving us wisdom about something in front of us, someone in front of us, a relationship, an opportunity. There's so much wisdom in the moment. Can you talk more about that wisdom and just, I guess, how people can think about that and connect with that in their everyday?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I had my grandmother and my aunts, and like I just felt like there was a lot of wisdom keepers around me. And I don't know if it's because today a lot of us move away from home or we don't live close by, but I found that like a lot of my friends who are my age, late 30s, 40s, are like, where are all of the
where like on social media, I saw someone who was like in their 70s the other day. I was like, why do I love this?
Yes.
I'm yearning for the elders to be in my feed.
Yes.
Rather
like,
than the
tell me this
25-year-old
is normal,
life coach.
please. Tell me. Yes. And, I think that times have just changed.
Yeah.
I think more so because women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who would be kind of the people we're looking to, are living. They're not just at home. They're not just grandmas. They're not like, they have a fullness in their lives. And I think that that's part of the transition that's happening too. And I think also we're moving and just life is different for us than it was 50 years ago, where people just stayed in the same community where they were for the most part. But this book was really an opportunity to remind ourselves of the wisdom that we have inside through the experiences that we've been through, and to look at the lessons not just as an opportunity to bash ourselves about what we did or didn't do correctly in hindsight. Every mistake that I've made, everything that I've done wrong has been an opportunity for me to grow. And I think when we look at it as we look at our wisdom or our lessons as a, man, I really fucked that up, or I really messed that up, then the only thing we can do is be hard on ourselves. The only thing we can do is shame ourselves. The only thing we can do is get so deep into our story that something is wrong with us. Versus, I learn either way. I win either way. Either way, I'm carrying a lesson with me. Either way, I'm bringing something with me. Either way, I'm still moving forward. And I think that's really the power of the wisdom that we have within us. Yes, I want the wisdom. I want the elders. Yes, I want to hear my friend's opinion. But what about the knowledge that I already know inside of me? And I think that's that honesty, that intuition, that truth that's like, you already know. You really already know. So what are you going to do with this knowing is the real truth. We're looking for that validation outside of ourselves, which I think is great. But also I think it's important to know what we know too, so that we can be the person that we rely on and trust. As so many people always ask me, how do I build self-trust? How do I know what my intuition is? By listening. It's by trusting that what you're feeling is the right choice, and then acting on it.
Exactly. I think, and it's a brave act. I think especially for people that have not worked that muscle, it feels like you're jumping off a cliff and you don't know if there's going to be a net at the bottom. You're like, it just feels really scary. But it is something that I think over time I felt, especially in my 30s, where the more that I did it, the more it garnered confidence, momentum, and almost like a little archive of moments that I can look back on and be like, yeah, remember that worked out okay. Or it didn't, but I was okay. And I want to talk about, just on that note, just this fear of things not working out, failing that people have, and how that keeps us incredibly stuck, and not realizing our just wholeness and our potential. I love the way you talk about this, and I'll butcher it, but just, realizing that on the other side of failure, like, that we're okay. Can you describe like a point in your life that exemplifies that?
Yeah, I think the time where I realized, I'll choose a time from the book,
Yes.
was when my grandmother passed. And I genuinely did not think that I was going to be okay. I write in the book that it was the moment that I realized that she was the gravity that was keeping me like anchored to the ground. And that now that she was gone, I was literally just floating around. It felt like that for years.
Wow.
And I had fully accepted this is just what life will be now. I'll just have anxiety. I'll just be afraid to drive. I just literally will not be myself again because that loss was such a big loss for me. And then years again. So I think it's important to mention that, sometimes these things take time. But I, was seeing a therapist and I was working through it. And I got to a place where I realized that, yes, I was allowed to grieve. I was allowed to honor the loss. And then also, I have a daughter. I have a life. And I started thinking about, some of the big losses that my grandmother had. I remember when she lost her mother. And, we still had a good time after that. And I reminded myself that it felt like dishonor to enjoy my life. And I had to be honest that it felt like a betrayal to move forward. And that I was not honoring anything that she would want for me by not giving joy a chance.
Yeah.
And that recognition was like the moment, like if you could think of a line in the sand, that I stepped on the other side of it. And I was still very close to where I just came from and still very far from where I wanted to go. But it was just that realizing that, okay, I took one step and I'm still here.
Yeah.
Maybe if I just take another. And it's a process, when we think about grief, which could be a death or it could also be divorce, or it could be having a baby.
Yes.
We don't even think about the joy that we can be enjoying and experiencing grief.
Yes.
But every time I have a situation where I am celebrating the loss of what I thought something was, what I thought life was, who I was, what my relationship was, and I take that brave, courageous step toward moving forward with that new information, with that new knowledge, I think that that's really teaching myself that I can make it even through really hard times.
Yes.
And none of us want to admit that because we think that it's like, okay, I'm prepping my body for the next hard time, but there just will be hard times. And I think it's a really beautiful ode to life to learn how to move through it and still hold both things, the toughness of the grief or the loss or the transformation, and the beauty that we can still have joy and love and excitement and community
Yes.
at the same time.
Yes.
And I think that's the wisdom that we learn and that we carry with us as we grow.
Beautifully said. I think being able to hold both is something I'm learning as an adult. I'm learning as a mother. I'm learning as, just a wife. I'm learning. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that I think my mind has a lot to say about it, and I don't think we're taught to hold both.
No,
which is
I don't think so either.
interesting. Now, like, you're a mother too, and it's like I think a lot about like the work that I'm doing and or have done, and I'm like, how do we translate this into motherhood and bringing up
Mhm.
children, not to avoid the
Mhm.
work that I'm doing, but more so like just to be more conscious of like the origins of some of these things that I'm working through.
Mhm.
Um, you say joy is a constant. I saw in one of your
Mhm.
posts. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think when people are so deep in their grief or their
Mhm.
frustration or their anger, it feels impossible to hold both. So I guess what does that mean and what does that look like?
I think when I talk about joy being a constant, I'm talking about the fact that it's always accessible to us. It's
Yes.
always a choice. I have not found joy to except for in children where it's something that is a natural when you're in grief. We just actually put my dog down this
Mm,
past week. He was 15, and it was the first experience that I had with my kids where something or someone that we knew
yeah.
had passed. It was our first grief together. And I could see them naturally holding both. There were moments where they would be playing with the dog and trying to get him to do things and like taking pictures. And then there were moments where they were really sad about what was they knew was gonna happen.
Mm,
And so I will say that I don't think that we're taught to hold both, but I do think we're taught to release that. I do think that there's
interesting.
a natural inclination maybe we have to hold both, and then someone says, "You shouldn't be playing right now. This is a sad time."
Yeah.
I think that the social construct of what we're supposed to be doing is what ends up giving us this very linear way of being rather than the
Hmm.
duality of holding the good and the bad, the hard and the tough, the joy and the sadness at the same time, which I think is something we can do. I mean, you have a 7-month-old, and I'm sure he has a myriad of emotions
Yes.
in like 15 minutes. And I think,
Yes. Love them for it.
right, we all have those feelings. We're like, oh, I really like what she just said. Oh, that's kind of shady.
Yeah,
We're
totally.
experiencing all these things, but we're just taught to keep it down. And
Hmm.
so obviously you don't have to share every single thought that's coming to your mind, but I
Yeah.
do think it would be really interesting to just I think of it as a curiosity. I think about healing as an invitation. You're inviting
Hmm.
yourself to try something new and see how it fits. What would it feel like to be really broken about the fact that this relationship has ended, but also hold the joy of what I know is coming for me in the future?
Yes.
I don't have to tear myself apart just because something has ended, changed, or transformed. I
Hmm.
can believe that what's for me is still coming.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm looking for my me time these days. I am a new mom about a year in, and I know how important it is to have my me time. So I have been get this, you're gonna have the best time too. I've been taking the out of office gummies from Soul. I love this brand. They help me get my much needed me time at the end of the day. Usually at the end of the week, I take these. They're so delicious, first of all, and they're convenient, just a little gummy. And they give me that warm, fuzzy feeling. It's like blissful, euphoric. And it's a microdose of THC and CBD. So I'm not someone that likes to get high at all. And this is like the perfect feeling. Oh my God. I take the 1.5 milligram. They also have 3 milligram and 6 milligram. But yo, I can go for a jog. I can watch my favorite TV show. I can cook. I can check my emails on this. But like the stress is gone and it's so nice. My anxious thoughts nowhere to be seen. So I highly recommend. I know a lot of you out there are off alcohol or lessening your alcohol intake. This is an incredible substitute. I think it's like so much better. And I love that they grow their products right here in the USA, organically farmed, and they're gluten free. The founders, Angelie and Mike, brother sister duo, are so incredible. They were on the podcast. They wanted to create natural alternatives to medication that really tackles the problems that they were dealing with, like sleeplessness, anxiety, focus, and pain. And they do it so well. I love this brand. Give Soul a try. Head to getsoul.com and use the code almost30 for 30% off your order. It's a huge discount. Most brands do not give you that big discount. That's 30% off your order using the code almost30. One last time, getsoul.com and code is almost30 for 30% off. In terms of like looking to the future, um, what is that balance? I think a lot of us like to have a plan. A lot of us like to have like a very specific
Yeah.
vision. And what is the balance between that and then also knowing that like we could never plan quite the grand vision that like God's spirit has in store for
Yeah.
us.
I do think that we can still plan. I mean, I'm an Aries, so I'm
Yeah,
planning.
no, I love it. I love
Recovering
it.
perfectionist.
I'm a Virgo, so I get
Oh,
you.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. You're planning for sure. Like we're planning. I'm writing the goals. I think it's important to know where you're going. I think it's
Mhm.
important. I'm not saying like, oh, just put all your
Yes.
money in savings and we'll see what happens with retirement. Like, no,
Yeah.
definitely plan. Um, but the control piece.
Yeah. Mhm.
How can we plan, take action, and surrender to the fact that things may work differently than we planned it working out? And how can we be open to the fact that it worked out in the best way that it was meant to work out for us, rather than holding the resentment and the grudge that we couldn't control the outcome? There are times where I know I get an inclination in business or something like that, and it'll come to me and say, email that person, and I don't know why. I just trust it.
Mhm.
Right? I still have
Mhm.
to take the action in email. If I don't email, they'll never get my message. So
Right.
we have to take action. But trusting that the email that I sent is going to come back when I need to. And yes, we still follow up and all the things, but I have surrendered. I've sent the email. And, that's
Mhm.
a really basic example. But I think some of us need that reminder of looking at pressuring, pushing, emotionally manipulating, all of the different
Yes.
ways that we're
Reaching.
reaching,
Mhm.
that we're trying to control a situation is expending our energy. It's most likely
Yes.
pushing people away. And it's probably disappointing us because we think that we're failing when actually we're not giving life a chance to happen.
Mm.
And so that's what I think our future can look like, in that we are very focused on what we want overall. We're very focused on what we want in business, in life, in our family, and our finances, that we are taking all of the action that we can based on the information that we have. And that also we are not always doing, being, pulling, pushing, that we are surrendering and allowing
Mhm.
things to take root, that we're resting. We think about it in terms of a plant. You have to do all of this work, the tilling, the soil, the composting, to be able to have fertile soil so that we can plant the seed. And then for some things, they take forever. If we
Oh,
think about a
right.
tree, we may not even see a bloom for years.
Yeah.
We still have to take care of it, but then there's just moments of rest. And
Yes.
if we allow ourselves that rest, if we allow ourselves that surrender, that's where our lives. That's where our joy lives. That's where the excitement lives. That's where the free time that you think you never have lives. We have to have that moment to take those breaks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the control piece, you've talked about it a lot on social media in different ways and
Mm-hmm.
in the book as well, but yeah, I love how can you talk a little bit more about like the origins of control? I guess where is that coming from? And it's different for every person, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess what have you seen in your work and or in your own life where that
Yeah.
control is coming from?
I think it depends on where it's coming on what you're struggling with. So like for the recovering perfectionist, I see control coming from, if I'm perfect, then people will love me, see me, validate me. If not, then I won't be. So how can I control this to make sure that I am loved, seen, respected, and worthy of that
Mm.
love? So that's more so from the perfectionist piece. People pleasers, I will do all of the things that you need me to do. I will show up in all of the ways that you need me to show up. And hopefully you will reciprocate that at some point and love and see me too. So I have to control this relationship and make sure that you are happy,
Mm.
seen, supported, and loved, so that at some point you will see me reciprocate it, support me, and love me. And so those are just two examples, but those are the most common. And I think that people are often hoping for that reciprocation. They're often hoping for the control and the effort to control will be seen as an act of love versus
Mm.
control.
Yeah.
I think that uh, for myself, for sure, it was a survival mechanism in my home.
Mhm.
Um, Being perfect or ensuring that things were as perfect as possible, it ensured that there was less room for error and I felt
Mhm.
safer.
Yes,
It was a
exactly.
safety thing.
Mhm.
And so whether it's codependency, whether it's whatever way that you find yourself trying to control, And I see this a lot. And when I used to work with people in groups, in relationships, romantic relationships, trying to control the person in the relationship, there's usually the person that loved you at some point for the fact that you controlled everything. And then at some point, it gets to a place where it's no longer feeling like an act of love. It feels suffocating.
Yes.
And that usually shows up in our romantic, professional, and familial relationships, where it goes from I'm loving you, doing the work that I should be doing, to I cannot breathe.
Yes.
And so I think when we think about control in the sense that it was something that I did to keep myself safe at one point, a behavior that I learned, not because I'm trying to be malicious or mean, but it was something that was keeping me feeling loved, safe, and seen.
Yeah.
We can work with a therapist, a coach, a spiritual teacher to unlearn that behavior and find ways to be loved, seen, and respected for who we are without that needing to be a crutch that we lean on that is literally draining us and draining our relationships.
Yeah, it is. It's such an energy suck. And I find that my controlling tendencies intensify during seasons of change, like really intense seasons of change, whether it's when I moved in with my now husband, whether it was like right before we got married, now in motherhood, because everything feels new. Not everything, but just about everything feels new. And so it's very disorienting. And so the control is like, let me bring in things that I know I can control. And then that kind of keeps me anchored. But really, it's just preventing me from feeling and experiencing what I need to feel and experience in order to grow in this new season. And I'm constantly in conversation with that part of me that wants to control it. And it's so, I have to remind myself it is so natural. And it's also really beautiful if you're someone listening who is in a partnership. It can be really scary to like be called out for that.
Oh my gosh.
When my husband called me, he's like, what he would say to me was like, but so true, so clear, so direct. And I'm like, no, but I'm a nice girl. What do you mean?
I'm a good person.
Yeah, I'm a good person. Like, and he would call me out for certain things that I was controlling. I'm like, yo, you're so right. And just being in conversation, he was so loving with that, but also direct. And just to be able to talk about where it comes from. Like, I felt this when I was growing up and I had to do this or whatever. I know it can feel intense and shameful, some of these things that come up, but when you share it, and this is kind of where I want to round out with you, just in terms of building community and friendships and relationships that can support you through these seasons. But I just found that was like the key to connecting on a deeper level with my husband in particular, where I had those vulnerable moments of like, oof, I just saw a part of me that I did not like, but he saw that part of me and wanted to hold up a mirror, but with love. And so we can start a conversation around like, what is this really? What is this really? It's not you like needing to situate the plates and the cups in a certain way. Like, what is this really?
Sounds like me.
Yeah. I'm sure we have similar stories in terms of that. But in the book, you talk about root friends in particular, which I loved the quote from Tyler Perry. But can you talk about what that means?
Yeah. And I just want to say that the reason I call myself recovering perfectionist, or people call themselves recovering people pleaser, is because it leaves space for the fact that it's going to happen again.
Exactly.
So when we lead to, the community piece, which I think comes naturally or more naturally when you acknowledge this is what I bring to relationships, the good and the not so good. Here's how I can show up. Then we get to build those root friends. And the analogy it like stopped me in my tracks, because it essentially talks about, if you think about a tree, you have the leaf people. When the tough times come, they probably won't stay around. They'll blow away easily. You think about how easily leaves fall to the ground, right? And then you have your limbs, essentially, that, they'll probably be there. But if the weight gets too heavy, they'll crack, they'll break, and they still won't be there. But when you think about those root people who are essentially the firmness, the sturdiness behind you, your community. They are supporting you. They are loving you. They're there for you. And I kind of took the analogy a step further in that they're also underground. Like they're not out here trying to shine and say, look at what I did and look at how I showed up. You know, I talk about in the book, like when I fell to my lowest, my root people were the only people who could find me because they were at the root of me. And they were able to bring me back to the light. And so when we think about, we were just talking about this, when we think about building community, we're going to have leaf people. We're going to have branch people. We're going to have, you know, flower bud people essentially that bloom in a season and we never see them again. Like all of that's going to be there. But the root people, which are most likely for most of us, especially the older you get, a few of them. And when I say a few, yeah, you could have 15, but out of all the people you know, that's a few.
Yeah.
For me, it's more around 7, you know, solid people that I know that I can count on no matter what, verified or not, famous or not, book or not. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're there because they love me, they support me, and they see me. And I think that that is what the other side of healing is. I think that that is what our wisdom is helping us lean into. I think the more that we know about ourselves, the whole reason that I think healing is important, the more that we know about ourselves, the more that we're honest with ourselves, the more that we're able to see ourselves and then show up with others being our real, true, vulnerable selves. And there's nothing like being loved for who you are. And it's easier to receive it when we're able to do it for ourselves.
Yes.
And that's really the work. And it's a lifelong, everyday journey that I hope is filled with people who are helping light the way for you as you move forward.
Yeah, that's super profound just in terms of, like, we know it does start with, I think we know this concept where it like starts within, but I think just the time, the energy, the patience, the vulnerability, the courage it takes to actually do that work is so underrated and not talked about. And we think it happens overnight, like we started this conversation saying, but it is a process. And like to have those people, I mean, to be loved for who we really are, that really just hit me. Like, I think that's what just with my husband was so healing for me. I was like, wait, you don't mind that part of me? Like, you're not going to run away and to like love all of me. It almost felt like the parts of me that felt like thorns and ugly warts on me were like just melted into my being. And I was like, oh, like I loved it too. And it started with me, but like to be loved for that too, it was like a sealant where I'm like, okay, all good. Really, really profound. What would you say, that's my last question, what would you say is something that you, because I'm sure a lot of people look to you and listen to you and maybe think, I know you're incredibly vulnerable and on your path, but maybe assume that you've got it kind of, for the most part, figured out. What is a piece of your life right now where you're just like, ooh, okay, either it's sticky or just something that you are tending to that you'd be willing to share?
The path that I'm currently on is I'm learning how to not beat myself up when things don't turn out the way I hoped. And particularly when you have something like a book coming out, it's very easy to tear yourself apart. I mean, when they say you have to have a thick skin, this is what they mean in terms of how many no's you're going to receive, how many people are it's just a lot. And I'm like so committed to enjoying this process, to surrendering to the silliness and the fun. Like I get to write a book. It's my second. Like how amazing would it be to enjoy this versus, you know, not be on my own side during this process. And so that's kind of the work that I'm in right now. And of course, it's because the first time I beat myself up. And so now learning, maybe I can do this differently. Maybe I can give myself the compassion that I didn't have the awareness to give myself that first time is the goal.
Beautiful. The book is Wisdom of the Path, and it's incredible. Again, like I don't read self-development books and feel what I felt reading this. There is just a heart and a poetry to it that just really, really hit me. So I cannot wait for people to get the book. Thank you for coming in person. So good to meet you.
So good to meet you.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one. Love ya. Thank you so much, Yasmin. We appreciate you. The book is Wisdom of the Path, and you can follow Yasmin on Instagram. It's a great follow, Yasmine Cheyenne. And thank you all so much for listening and for subscribing to the pod so that every new episode hits your little pod inbox. We do at least one a week, but sometimes two. And you can also watch us on video on YouTube.
Yeah, we love you guys so much. It means the world to us that you listen to Almost 30, that you subscribe, that you're a part of our lives and community. You are truly the best. We cannot wait to share with you our book next year in 2025. It's like going to be such a full circle moment. So we'll see you on the next one. We love you.
Bye.